Hello, everybody. Welcome back to a very special episode of Squat Cobbler. You know what that means. We're going to talk about being touched inappropriately. I can tell by Kelly's face he loves it. Get it though, like very special episode, like in the old sitcoms when they would go over like the serious subject matter.
Right. Yep. It's not this show. It's not.
Well, anyway, you should like and subscribe. Seems like the perfect place to drop that. I am Dr. Mike at Official Pagan on everything, and joining me as always.
Hi, everybody. This is Kelly at KELLYTHUL on Twitter and Instagram. And I think you were a little inappropriate touch focused, and I didn't think you were going to get your social stuff out, but you did. So well done.
There's
well
time
done,
for both, always.
You make time, right? That's what you do.
If it really matters, you make this up. Well, see, what threw me off with all that is Kelly and I were talking about Kiss off mic. So
yeah, which is probably a show. Probably at some point is that maybe we'll do a show sometime on my journey with Kiss and where that road came to an abrupt stop.
It would be an interesting show because, as we've discussed, and when we did our Ace Frehley review, I'm not that knowledgeable of Kiss. It's a band that I just never really got into. So I think it's because I just I missed their peak. So Kiss was already kind of Kiss. Like when I became aware of them, it's like I missed discovering Kiss, I guess, the way that a lot of people would.
Yep. That could be a fun show down the road. But it's not the show for tonight.
No,
is it?
It is not. Tonight we have to talk about something that's even more important and pressing. Probably the most serious issue that's facing our country this week. That's the release of the new Mortal Kombat movie.
Yeah, and boy, they released the first 7 minutes of the movie. Yes. Looking good, looking like it's going to be a pretty enjoyable movie. So if you haven't seen that we'll include a link to one of the many versions out there of the first 7 minutes, but you really owe it to yourself to see it because it's looks really strong. And I would say the name, but I wouldn't want to mispronounce it. So what you see down below is the name of the actor who was also in Westworld and played kind of a samurai character there. And he's awesome. I love anytime I see him in an action, that name right there in front of you. He's super awesome. But he's great. And it was heavily featured in those first 7 minutes, of course. And Scorpion in the Mortal Kombat movie. So pretty excited.
Yeah, and this is the first 7 minutes of the film, as Kelly mentioned, rather than just the trailer. There are some trailers out, and the Red Band trailer currently, I'm sure something will beat it sooner, but currently is the most watched Red Band trailer of all time now.
Oh,
and
really?
It's at that record very quickly because it's only been a month or whatever it's been out. So that's pretty cool. How are you in terms of Mortal Kombat fandom? I mean, we've talked about Mortal Kombat a little on the show, particularly around the Midway cabinets and things like that. Where are you at with it as a game and with the movies that have spawned from that?
So, so not an avid fan, not a rabid fan, I guess would be, but there's nothing wrong with it. And I enjoy the Mortal Kombat video games, but I was never into it enough that when the first movie came out, I think it was 1995 or something like that.
Sounds about right.
I haven't seen the first one. Or then I believe there was also a sequel. So I haven't seen the original Mortal Kombat work that this is being considered a reboot on it. So I have a vague familiarity with the first two movies, just a little bit on them, and then just been kind of reading up a little bbit on the new version, but reasonably familiar with the cast of characters from the game and kind of the general arc that more because we're up to, is it 11 Mortal Kombat 11 now?
I believe so in the numbered ones, but there's also spin-off games and things like that as well.
So somewhat familiar with those reoccurring characters within there. So decent, but I think you're a much bigger fan.
Yeah, particularly the early games. I mean, we talk a lot about retro gaming here, but the early Mortal Kombat games in particular, I loved the original Mortal Kombat. And I don't want to sound all like hipster or anything like that, but I was so early into the Mortal Kombat thing that I have Ed Boon and John Tobias, the guys who made the game, were making their own newsletter while they were working on the game, and I have the newsletter.
Nice.
Like giving people updates on through the mail that they would send out to you, like this like photocopied newsletter that they would send out from their offices. I have that. So not to sound like I knew it before you guys, but I knew it before you guys.
You did.
Yeah. So
yeah,
I was a big fan of Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, a different time in terms of how one reached the fan base.
Yeah, definitely. And the game, for if for some reason somebody's not familiar with this, fighting games were starting to get really popular because of Street Fighter 2. Fighting games had already existed and it had probably always existed with karate style games and things like that. And there were boxing games and that sort of thing. But once Street Fighter 2 kind of hit, every fighting game became Street Fighter 2. Like that was the template for fighting games. And a few games that tried to break away from that, but nothing that really stuck. Ed Boon and John Tobias were trying to make a Jean-Claude Van Damme video game. And Jean-Claude Van Damme, I don't know if he didn't like the idea or initially said yes and backed out, but for whatever reason, they had to start pieces of this game and not Jean-Claude Van Damme to be a part of it. But they decided to continue on anyway and even include sort of a parody character of him and an actor who does martial arts who's a character in the game named Johnny Cage. So they made the game anyway, and it was, again, the right timing for fighting games, but completely different than what people expected from a fighting game. Every fighting game looked like Street Fighter 2. Like that was how you made fighting games. And the reason I specifically say Street Fighter 2, Street Fighter 1, which comparatively very few people have played, is a really different game. It's more in the line of the karate style games. Street Fighter 2 was a vast departure from that. So that kind of set the template, and Mortal Kombat went a completely different direction. It also had more realistic looking graphics compared, I mean, not today, but compared to Street Fighter 2, which looked, animated. It was animated sprites. This was digitized versions of actors. So it looked comparatively very realistic, which really upset a lot of politicians at the time who basically thought you were murdering people by playing this arcade game. So it became a big deal. And naturally, kids, myself included, flocked to this game because you weren't supposed to. So that just made it even more popular among everyone. And around 1995 or so, they did make a movie. The movie's not great, the original one, but it's fun for what it is. And the bar for video game movies was so low that just making a competent movie with a beginning, middle, and end that had elements of the game in it basically made it Citizen Kane at the time when you were watching it.
Hey, don't be throwing dirt on Mario Brothers.
So here's the weird thing. I'll defend Mario Brothers. There's actually elements of that movie that I do like. Oh. But
we'll have to do a show sometime. You have to explain those to me.
Yeah. There's some stuff in there that I liked that they did. Not as an adaptation, though, horrible. So, I mean, and that was like the high watermark prior to Mortal Kombat. So it was so bad, just so bargain basement for everything that Mortal Kombat, I'm not going to say it's a terrible movie, but it's not great. It's like a Sci-Fi Channel movie, essentially. the first Mortal Kombat. It's fun. It's dumb. There's a lot of bad CGI and 90s stock techno music in there. But again, compared to what was happening with video game adaptations, it seemed amazing. This was Academy Award worthy, incredible high art that you were watching. And then they threw all that away by making a sequel. And the sequel, despite having a vastly bigger budget, somehow looks way worse. It looks like it's a dramatic step down. The casting is even worse. Mortal Kombat hasn't aged well in terms of the way some of the casting was done for the original. it's worse. The acting's worse. The dialogue is worse, and it's also toned down. And the original is PG-13, so I mean, it wasn't like a hard R movie or anything like this one appears like it will be. So nothing like that. But the second one is toned down even further to try and I guess get an even younger fan base, and they basically just burned whatever bridges they
Yeah.
had built doing that. There was a couple attempts at TV shows that didn't last. Then they had Mortal Kombat Legacy, which was a web series that was it started really strong, and that was meant to lead into this movie. But this movie had been in development for a really long time, and eventually everybody quit. So Legacy was supposed to be, a few episodes online that led into this movie. It lasted 2 seasons, and then everybody quit because this movie was just not happening. So when they finally got this project off the ground, even as a big Mortal Kombat fan, I actually wasn't excited because again, I do like the first one in a bad sci-fi channel movie kind of way, but everything after that, not so much. The only thing that was kind of good, there was an anime movie that was released last year that was pretty good. So my expectations for this were pretty low until I saw the trailer in the first 7 minutes.
Yeah, and the trailer kind of hinted at some things, and you'll have to name check me here with all your Mortal Kombat cred. Goro, I want to say the name is Goro, was actually a puppet largely in the original Mortal Kombat one, and given the fact it was that, super impressive. I mean, in terms of, it's a puppet, so ultimately that, but actually a really impressive, a better puppet than the Rancor and Star Wars, Empire, Return of the Jedi. Sounds interesting, but here obviously we're in a different world when it comes to CGI and all that stuff, which can be a good thing and a bad thing. But it looks like from the brief glimpses you get of him, he's going to look pretty nice. He's not going to look like the Rock and Scorpion King. Super scary.
The Rock and Scorpion King is way above the second Mortal Kombat movie.
Wow.
Which doesn't make sense. And a lot of people, there's a lot of retrospective reviews of those first two films because of this one coming out. And everybody points out it doesn't make any sense. The second movie has a much bigger budget because the first one was very successful. So the second movie has a much bigger budget. How does it look like such a gigantic step down over the first movie? The CGI isn't as good as the graphics in the game.
Yeah, so it's not good.
It's just blurry and pixelated, and just pieces of characters and background disappear randomly. And there's tons of recycled footage in it because they clearly could only afford to do it somehow despite having a bigger budget. Like there's a scene that everybody makes fun of where a character falls into this like pit of fire. That gets reused like 5 times in the movie. And they don't even like swap out the character, like green screen out. It's the same guy falling no matter who's supposed to be falling.
It's kind of the Flintstones aesthetic.
Yeah, it is. It is
same
bad.
House passing by every time.
So. It's aggressively bad.
Wow. No, so like I said, I had to have a deep, passionate fire to when this was announced originally and started seeing some trailers on it. I was like, that'll be pretty good. But then I watched the first 7 minutes and go, yeah, I'm totally checking this movie out. So I think it's going to be pretty cool. And then it does appear that Reptile, which I guess was in the first one in a really frightening, horrible, bad way, is coming back here possibly in a above Scorpion King Rock level of quality here, which would be significant. But the original Reptile in the original Mortal Kombat looks a lot like one of the characters in Monsters Inc. versus Mortal Kombat Combatant. So,
which is weird because again, the first one, it's not perfect, but like the characters from the game are there. They more or less look like they look in the game. The basic mechanics of it are all there, and then Reptile is totally different.
Yeah, we gotta get him in, toss him in, and kind of cobble things together. But we don't shy away from the hard issues on Squat Cobbler. So do have to ask, Mike, what's your position on Molina's teeth?
So it again fitting with the game, so I'm okay with that. I my worry about it, because I really enjoyed the trailer in the first 7 minutes. My concern about it is they introduce a lot of characters in the trailer.
Yep.
So I'm concerned that it's going to get bogged down by trying to introduce as many characters in the game as possible, and you don't really flesh out the storylines. So that was my problem. The anime movie, which I want to say was like an hour and a half long, which was good. It came out last year. Starts really strong. Starts very similar to this. The first 7 minutes are basically the same, which again, though, is a big part of the setup of the original game. So it's going to be when you're retreading the same material. But it starts really strong. It starts with the Sub-Zero and Scorpion storyline setup, gets into the main tournament, introduces some of the other characters. It's going really well until like the last 45, maybe 30 minutes of the movie. They try and introduce like 10 more characters from the game into the anime movie and just drop all of the balls while they're doing it. Nothing gets resolved. Nothing. It turns into the last season of Game of Thrones, where it all just kind of suddenly starts off really strong, then suddenly just feels slapped together and unresolved. And that's my concern about the movie. That trailer does introduce like 10 characters.
Yeah, and it'll be. I'm hopeful. We'll see it goes through. It was just, I have seen a little bit of chatter around that Molina in the game is this combination of really beautiful. Has the face mask, ahead of her time with the face mask, way to go. And, so the face mask on, peeled off, and it's that real demon-like teeth. And it looked like from the trailer, she just looks fairly British. Teeth aren't great. But
I, unlike Kelly, am not a racist against British people.
It's not. It's. I don't think it's racism against Britain. It's. I don't know what it would be, but I'm
Pretty sure it's racism.
Counting on our number of viewers over the pond being low, so I don't. So, but we'll find out in the comments whether I calculated correctly on that.
First 10 comments, all British watchers, super angry. Again, not me, Kelly.
Pitbull chap, our teeth are just
Yeah, I gotta see it. Like I said, my real concern is the number of characters that get introduced. I don't want this to be like the anime or so many other things that have come out. Like a lot of the superhero movies, I think, start to get bogged down once they introduce a lot of characters. The best example would be like the third Spider-Man movie of the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies, where it just fears all. Even if you take out the terrible dance sequence, which is awful, but even if you take that out, the movie doesn't make a lot of sense and gets bogged down because they're trying to horseshoe in these characters that don't make any sense to the plot line.
Yeah, we need more movies to show the kind of restraint that Infinity War did, to kind of just keep that cast down to an even 1,000, something like that.
How Marvel does it with their small, intimate productions.
Yeah. Small, tight-knit group of characters that they carry through. But actually, no, I'm super stoked and excited. Looking forward to seeing this. We'll probably do a show sometime on the retro gaming side to go even a little deeper into some of the Mortal Kombat video games, but very excited too. So if you haven't seen those first 7 minutes, be sure and check it out. And when the movie hits this, April 23rd?
Yeah, Friday, April 23rd.
Friday, April 23rd. Be sure to catch it. So
in theaters and on HBO Max.
Excellent. So. Yeah, I saw Kong versus Godzilla in the theater versus Max. This one I might I don't know. This is a movie that obviously would rock at big screen. So I don't know. I'll catch an IMAX or on my couch, but one of those two places I'll see.
I basically got HBO Max to watch this. So
there you go. Excellent. So hey, HBO Max, you're welcome. Feel free.
Yeah. Obviously, we just saved your streaming service. So
that's right.
You're welcome, guys.
Sponsorship would be nice.
I will say this one other negative thing right off the bat. There is a new version of Techno Syndrome in this. Techno Syndrome, for anyone who doesn't know, is the theme song for Mortal Kombat, which is aptly titled because it's basically, if you say 90s techno music to somebody, it's the song they think of, whether they realize it's from Mortal Kombat or not. The original song is credited to the fictitious name, the Immortals. It's the band Lords of Acid. Because they were going for a PG-13 rating, they didn't want Lords of Acid's name on it because they're kind of associated with much more explicit content in their records. But they did at the time. I don't know if they still do. At the time, they did tons of movie and game theme songs and things like that. They were like the go-to theme song band. So they did this theme song that was a huge hit in the 90s. And that soundtrack album associated with the game and the movie, because there were separate soundtracks released for them, both featured that song prominently on there, and both sold extremely well and made tons of money for that band. It was re-recorded for this, not by them, by some artist that I've never heard of, and I don't like the new version. That was already released as a single ahead of the movie, I guess, trying to cash in on the the fond love people have of that song, and I didn't like it. That's not going to make or break the movie for me, though.
You sure it wasn't done by Hugh Laurie? So, yep. Yeah. So I haven't had a chance to cross past that and hear that. So, sounds like I'm not in a rush to either. So
yeah,
okay,
I mean, it wasn't for me. I'm sure there's people who are going to like it, and it probably, especially younger people who don't know the original song, they may like it better just because this is how they're going to be introduced to it. But as a fan of Lords of Acid and of that song and how that sort of captured what that type of music was at that time, this isn't it. But again, they're going for something different. I'm just not the target audience of that song.
There you go. All right. Anything else for this week, sir?
Nope. I think the only other thing you could do, if you have any Amazon products with Alexa built into it, you need to say her name and then the name of the game, so it will scream at you and play a few seconds of Techno Syndrome.
Oh, nice. So yeah, this is an Alexa-free zone, but we'll see what the good folks at Google have done to counteract.
And they had that before the movie. That's just a thing that's on there.
Sweet. Yeah, we'll have to try that out. Cool. All right. Hey, if you haven't, please consider liking and subscribing. Hit us up in the comments if there's other content you'd like to see. If you're British, don't want to hear from you. You know, it's just a
you
joke.
might as well be in Hanson at this point.
It's just a joke. You know, get over it. We won the Revolutionary War. Get over it. You know, so. And I think I've finished things well for this week. So
yeah, definitely.
Catch you later, folks. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.